کنفرانس‌های بین‌المللی با شرکت شخصیت‌های سیاسی، تحلیلگران، متخصصان و پارلمانترها درباره رویارویی مقاومت و قیام مردم ایران با دیکتاتوری آخوندی.
کنفرانس سیاست آمریکا در قبال ایران. سخنرانی‌های موکیزی، وزیر دادگستری آمریکا 2009، سفیر لینکلن بلومفیلد، معاون پیشین وزیر امور خارجه آمریکا.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the third panel. My name is Lincoln Bloomfield and I have the high honor of being joined by four esteemed American colleagues to discuss U.S. policy on Iran. For many years, Americans have hoped and dreamed that we could engage more than 80 million Iranians with a rich Persian culture and have a great relationship, that we could trade with them, that we could learn from them, that we could be friends, and we could cooperate around the world in science and technology and art and culture. But that dream has often been frustrated as we've looked at the headlines decade after decade since 1979, and the question for American policymakers is usually, what do we do about Iran? What should we do about this? What should we do about terrorism, human rights, trafficking in persons, gun running across to Yemen, non-state actor militias, gray warfare, subversion of neighboring cultures? What should we do about the nuclear program? What should we do about hostage-taking? When can it end? Well, if there's any hope of a coherent set of ideas, I believe we might get it from the four people sitting with me on the panel. And I'm joined today by Judge Michael Mookasey, the former Attorney General of the United States, and prior to that, an appeals court judge, by Ambassador Robert Joseph, who was the Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, and well before that, Bob and I knew each other in the Pentagon, where we cut our eye teeth, and he has an academic career. By Mitchell Reese, who's accomplished so much in academia and in government as a special envoy to Northern Ireland, as the Chief of Policy Planning to Secretary of State Colin Powell, as a dean and a president of universities and working for foundations, a truly an accomplished person with so much perspective, and by someone who's a personal hero of mine, General Chuck Wald, who I saw in action when he was the commander of European Command. He was deputy commander, but the Supreme Allied Commander was in Brussels. I'm going to start with Judge Mookasey. I think just to talk about U.S. policy, let's put on the table the terrorism listing of the MEK, NCRI, PMOI. Judge, would you give us your perspective? We already heard from the then director of the FBI who said that they were never consulted. But what impact did it have? How would you assess the importance or quality of that decision to put them on the terrorism list? What impact did it have on people's lives? What impact did it have on U.S. policy and on the people who supported the NCRI? And what can you tell us about the process of getting them off the list?
مایکل موکیزی، وزیر دادگستری آمریکا 2009. مجاهدین چگونه در لیست آمریکا قرار گرفتند؟ رژیم ایران از دولت آمریکا درخواست کرد مجاهدین را در لیست قرار دهد. آنها فقط زمانی عقب نشینی کردند که دادگاه استیناف واشنگتن اعلام کرد باید مدارکی را ارائه دهند که قرار دادن مجاهدین در لیست را توجیه کند.
Let me give you my own perspective on that and my own experience with MEK, because in some ways it's kind of a microcosm of what happened there and of what the first two panels discussed, namely the impact of disinformation, which played a huge role in that listing, as well as what alternatives are available. My first introduction to MEK came when I left government. I got a visit in my office, by appointment, of course, came to see me about MEK, of which I had never heard. And they wanted to know whether I would be willing to consider voicing some support for this worthy organization. I knew the worthy people who were trying to overthrow the regime in Iran. And of course, if you talk about overthrowing the regime in Iran, that made me sit up and bark. Obviously, that was something I was fascinated by. They said, oh, by the way, we have to warn you. This organization is on the list of foreign terrorist organizations. And I did a double or triple take. I couldn't understand it. But I started to read the literature and agreed after a while to come to a meeting and speak. Came back. Started, how did they get on the list of foreign terrorist organizations? Well, it appears that it happened in 1997. And it didn't happen because somebody at the State Department did research into the activities of MEK or NCRI or anybody or any other entity in the United States government. There was no cable from the CIA or other evidence. It happened kind of the way the demonstration got banned here. The administration was approached by Iran and asked if they would put the MEK on the list of foreign terrorist organizations. It was done, regrettably, by President Clinton, who, as an accommodation to Iran, because he thought it would help improve relations and would kind of smooth things over. And I still couldn't get over the fact that this organization that I was speaking up for, that espoused democracy, a nuclear-free country, rights for women, everything the United States stood for was on a list of foreign terrorist organizations. So we consulted with some lawyers and decided we would sue to get them off. Brought a lawsuit in Washington, D.C. I'm ashamed to have to admit in the privacy of this room that that lawsuit took rather a bit longer than you folks took to get the ban on the demonstration lifted. It took until at least a year or more. And I thought as soon as we filed the complaint, the State Department would react by saying, oh, well, you know, we did this a while ago, and it was a mistake. But they didn't. They, through the Justice Department, mounted a ferocious defense and backed down only when the Court of Appeals in D.C., it wasn't even the district court, it was the Court of Appeals in D.C., said that by a certain date, they would have to come up with evidence justifying the placement of the MEK on the list of foreign terrorist organizations. Now understand, this isn't just some list that is kept for bureaucratic purposes in Washington. It has, as Lincoln suggested, a very practical effect. People couldn't give money to the MEK. The MEK couldn't function in the United States, where there's a huge Iranian American community. People had to be careful of who they spoke to and what they said. I had to be careful, so I thought. For 15 years, until finally, in 2012, we got the ban lifted. I think the lesson to be learned is that if you keep at it, the way you did here in Paris, the way we did in getting the MEK off the list, you can prevail. Sometimes things look bleak. We have a bill passed Congress barring any agreement, basically any repeat of the JCPOA. No more JCPOA, according to Congress. So the current administration wants to conclude an understanding that's not in writing. Anyway, I suggest to you that when as Senator Lieberman indicated, when Congress gets going on this, they will not take it lightly, and hell hath no fury like a Congress made fools of, and they will not suffer it. That understanding is going to be a long way from fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you. And a result happened with an EU trial, a UK trial, and the trial here in France. All four, including the United States, concluded that there was no evidence of terrorism or intent for terrorism with the MEK. They all came to the same